All right, everybody, welcome to episode 55 of the Fantasy Timeline, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. I'm Josh at Real Fantasy TL. I'm here with my main man, Bill at Super Duper Flex. Bill, how you doing, brother?
Doing well. How are you, brother? I'm happy to have a few days off coming up, and you know, I guess that's about it. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man, long work week, but glad that there's a 4-day weekend in my future. Uh, Rest, relax. Obviously, Thanksgiving tomorrow. We got some games going on. One game getting rescheduled. We'll get into that as we go through the news. But yeah, man, I'm excited about the turkey and the stuffing and the macaroni and cheese and the mashed potatoes. And don't at me with the things you hate about Thanksgiving. Honestly, I don't care. Like, you do your Thanksgiving the way you want to do it. I'm gonna do my Thanksgiving the way I want to do it, and the way I do it is by eating everything that's served. So, on that note, let's hit the news, man. So, Thursday night, Card Seahawks, the rare Thursday night game that we actually want to watch. Um, Here's my big takeaway from this. When does Chris Carson get back? Yes, Carlos Hyde had 79 yards and a touchdown, but let's face it, man. I want Chris Carson to come back. That dude is I feel like he's criminally underrated in a lot of people's minds. I get it. He has some injury history. He's gone through fumbling issues in the past, but he is a really good running back that really doesn't get put into that really good running back talk. So I don't know. What did you see in this game, Bill?
It was just a fun game. It's nice to see two good teams that are playing at reasonably high levels go up against each other. It was just a fun game to watch, and tons of fantasy relevant players. So it was nice to actually have a Thursday night game that was fun. Um, and high scoring because usually they're duds, right? So I mean, that was nice. And but yeah, for Carson, it's just he's always going to be underrated because he was a late round pick, and then they drafted somebody to replace him, and they weren't, it never happened, and it's just one of those things where everybody's always expecting him to not be around next year, so his value, like in Dynasty in particular, is never going to be there because everybody has already seen that, Seattle kind of wanted to replace him. So, like, how can you trust him, long term, unfortunately? Because you would think that they're going to keep looking for somebody that is capable of replacing him.
Yeah, you're right. It's funny because Rashad Penny was supposed to be the guy, and he wasn't the guy. And then you get your CJ Procises and your Alex Collinses and your Carlos Hydes, and it always seems like they're trying to bring someone in there to knock him off, and he just always seems to be king of the hill.
Yep.
So, and here's some good news, Bill. Talking about Thursday night games, we have two games with heavyweights going this
Uh-huh.
Thanksgiving.
Oh
We have
yeah.
Lions Texans starting our day off, a clash of perennial powerhouses, and then we move right into the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington Football Team, which is another NFC East, maybe the best division in football right now.
I'm gonna
Going at it,
use I'm gonna use this term loosely,
yes.
but the Lions are gonna be the best team that plays tomorrow with 4 wins.
People who are listening to us on podcasts know we did not freeze. We're just sitting there really reflecting on the fact that the Lions are the best team record wise that is going to play on Thanksgiving.
Fortunately, it is Thanksgiving, and we really don't care who's playing. We're gonna watch it, but that's
Wow.
two bad games, right? Like that's just bad. But honestly, I'm really excited to see the Texans like just destroy the Lions tomorrow. Like I just want to see Watson do his thing. So it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the game that probably everybody was getting geared up to see, the Steelers and the Ravens, is getting moved due to COVID protocol, and everybody and their mother on the Steelers is complaining about the game getting moved to Sunday. They've been, the 10-0 team has been, disrespected by the NFL and has been dealt a bad hand. You know what, like, I'm sorry, like, this isn't even like, this happens at my job all the time. Like, yes, NFL players, they don't have a job like any normal person does. But like, this is just a fact of life. Sometimes you have things planned and they get moved. Like, it's just a human thing. It's not even a like NFL player thing, or, a regular guy watching on the couch thing. It's just, look, this stuff happens sometimes. You gotta adapt, and if it'll be curious if they do lose to the Ravens, if this will be the excuse that they were all geared up to play on Thursday, and they had to move it to Sunday, and they're whatever. But I was just laughing kind of at the fact that everyone from the Steelers, it looks like, was complaining on Twitter today about the fact that not only was their bye moved earlier in the season, but then now they're getting another game moved, and they're saying other teams aren't taking care of themselves and they're being punished for it. I mean, at the end of the day, is it annoying? Yeah, but would you rather just have the Ravens and the 45 guys on their team that have COVID just come out there and they're landing on top of you, they're sweating on top of you, they're breathing on top of you? I mean, I understand being a little miffed about it, but I would rather have a game moved a few days and maybe lessen my chance of getting the COVID than just playing on a Thursday, because it's what was on the schedule. But that's why I'm not an NFL player. So we'll move on. Eagles Browns, dude. Everyone was saying, listen, the weather was bad. Carson Wentz didn't have a good game because the weather was bad. Travis Fulgham didn't have a good game because the weather was bad. But who had a good game? Nick freaking Chubb. 114 rushing yards. He's so good. And he's somebody that I feel like should be in that top 5 running back conversation. And he was injured. He missed some weeks. I get that. And I feel like he's a guy that's kind of always left out, because obviously you're going to bring up CMC, Saquon, Dalvin Cook, Zeke, and Nick Chubb kind of gets pushed to the back of the line, but he's really good, and he's proving it. A lot of people were talking about, Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is going to take from him, but those guys, I mean, I think they work better together actually than they do when they're apart. So they're not really taking away; they're actually enhancing each other in a very strange way. But I don't know if you saw anything else or.
Yeah, I mean, Wentz is making some really bad passes. I mean, it's just like every week, it's like, I mean, but we're seeing that from a lot of quarterbacks this year. It's really weird, and that might have been no training camp. I don't know, or you're just not getting the timing with your receivers. It could just be something like that. But offense is up this year because the defenses don't. Like,
Right.
it's just like when there was the strike year or the lockout year or whatever. The defenses just were terrible that year, and that's exactly what's happening this year. So that doesn't make a ton of sense. But yeah, as for Chubb, like, I mean, the issue with him is his ceiling is lower, so for fantasy, he's not going to be considered top 5 because of Hunt. But they do make each other more efficient because they don't play nearly as much as some of those bell cows, so they're always fresh. And it's just like, it almost like they're symbiotic in that way. You know what I mean? Where it helps them. Yeah. As for anything else in that game, there really wasn't much that was exciting.
No, there really wasn't. I mean, that he was the one person I obviously I live in the Philly market, so I did see that game. He was the only person that really did anything that you saw that you were like, oh wow, that's actually pretty good. I mean, everyone has seen the Carson Wentz pick six, and I'm gonna give him a pass on that because he was getting straight up drilled as he was throwing that ball. And I mean, let's face it, any quarterback gets drilled while throwing a ball, there's, a potential of a pick. And it just so happened that the linebacker was right where the ball ended up, and there was no one in sight. It looked like it was a running back screen to Sanders, and he got popped. And Seone Takitaki, probably the best last name in all of professional sports, takes it to the house for a pick six. So, yeah, Wentz is struggling, but hopefully for Eagles Nation, he can maybe get some things back on track.
One thing about that is, like, you're in Philly area, so is there really talk of him getting pulled? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That surprises me a little bit.
The fan base wants it to happen, and while the coaching staff is steadfastly saying that Wentz is the guy, he's going to be the starter. Even after that game, Doug Peterson said there was no reason to pull him. That's that. But I want to bring this up since it came through. Lindsey Kennedy on YouTube going with Clinton Dix also. Yeah, actually, it's a great first name, last name combo. Clinton Dix. I mean, you could go a lot of different ways with that and mix up the first, the middle, or the first and the hyphenated last name, and make it what you want. But yeah, that's also a good one. If Seone Takitaki and Clinton Dix ever had a kid, Taki Dix. I mean, that might be a good hyphenation too.
So,
yeah.
Just a quick story, and it's not at all to do with football, but there is two streets by where I live, and one is called Champaign, and the other one is Dix, D-I-X, like Clinton Dix.
Yeah.
And there's a woman I know, and she said she grew up on Champaign and Dix.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I don't judge people for the lives they live. So, if you're living on Champaign and Dix, I'm with you, man. I hope you're living your best life. So, man, where do we go from there? All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the next game here. Falcons Saints. I think Taysom Hill played okay, and we're going to talk about him later on and things that we saw on the timeline. 284 total yards, 2 touchdowns. They were both rushing touchdowns. He didn't have a passing touchdown. But this was a big debate. The whole ESPN thing. Everybody knows about it. We will talk about it a little bit later. You don't know about it, Bill? You don't know about it?
I don't know about it.
Are you kidding me right now?
Please tell me what it is, then maybe I will have no.
I think you know about it, and maybe you're just not understanding the ESPN Taysom Hill controversy. No? All right. So week 11 starts, and I guess all year on ESPN. I have not played in any leagues on ESPN this year. So
the tight end thing.
The tight end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And then once he got named the starting quarterback, ESPN held fast to the fact that they were going to leave him as a tight end and then reassess at the beginning of week 12. I mean, I actually tweeted about this on Sunday morning because I was watching the ESPN fantasy show, and Matthew Berry, he gave a very eloquent explanation about why they're doing this and so on and so forth. And I actually tweeted that I respect the fact that he's the guy kind of as the face of ESPN fantasy, but probably not really the guy who's like making the decisions when it comes to like, should Taysom Hill be a tight end or a quarterback, that he kind of went in front of everybody and had to take the bullets for, whoever runs ESPN fantasy making that decision, because their thing is like, well, he was a tight end all year, and we don't change players position midweek, and it's like, but he's a quarterback now.
Yeah,
Like, it
yeah,
wasn't even like Sean Payton came out and said, "Oh, he's going to play 10 snaps at quarterback." They were like, "He is the starter." And then they came out and said, "Jameis Winston will not come into the game barring an injury." Like, they were very steadfast on Taysom Hill was going to be the starter for better
yeah.
or for worse.
Well, and just like I mean, the fact that he's a quarterback, Taysom Hill is designated as a quarterback for the team, right? He's not designated as a tight end
That is a good question.
because that's my guess, and so ESPN for just taking that luxury to make him a tight end in the first place is probably inaccurate. And let's not run down this rabbit hole, but it's
hmm,
um you cleared it up for me, and then they come back and then they switch it for this week, and they made him a quarterback.
right. And so yes, I'm looking. They do now. Obviously, they have him designated as a quarterback because he is a quarterback now. So I don't know about last week if he was listed as a tight end. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, besides all that, I did and now the big controversy, and we'll talk about this in a little bit too, is that if you had him in your tight end spot, you can keep him in your tight end spot, but you can't make any other moves.
Yeah,
So it's kind of like, okay, like you can pretty much play this lineup until someone in your lineup either gets injured or has a bye and you need to replace them. But if you don't have any Bucks or Panthers on your team, you've run through the buys. You're set. Your team, barring injury, obviously, your team is your team. So it's kind of like you could, in theory, run this two quarterback in a one quarterback league for the rest of the season. And someone is going to win a championship doing this, and there's going to be, there's going to be pitchforks and torches. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later, so we don't want to get too deep into it now. So we're going to move on to the football team against the Bengals. Look, we talked about this guy a couple weeks ago, and I personally said, I am not buying the hype, so to speak. But Antonio Gibson, man, 104 total yards and a touchdown. Um, it's weird because last week it was J.D. McKissick getting all the targets, and it's like they also threw it a lot less in this game. I think they only had like 25 passing attempts, which the week before they had like 50. So I guess in higher volume games where Alex Smith is going to throw more, I guess you're going to see more J.D. McKissick. And in games where the passing volume is a little bit lower, you're going to see more of that Antonio Gibson. But I'm going to give him credit. I mean, I'm not going to dump on the guy after he has a game where he goes for over 100 and a touchdown. Obviously, I'm bearing the lead here because this is very sad to talk about. Everyone probably knows Joe Burrow, ACL, MCL, anything that ends in a CL is tore up. Everybody's talked about it. It's criminal that the Bengals did not put some semblance of an offensive line in front of him. It finally caught up to them in week 11. He is out for probably a year. So it's not even like, hey, we're going to come back in 2021 and start with Joe Burrow. I mean, this is probably, you're not seeing Joe Burrow to the end of 2021. You know what I mean? And that really sucks because, I mean, he was balling out, man. People were paying up for T. Higgins because of the connection that he and Joe Burrow had. And now, we thought it was going to be Ryan Finley. Now it's some other guy. I'm blanking on the name right now, which is funny because, of course, they announced this on Thursday after on Wednesday after waivers have run, and I picked up Ryan
Brandon
Finley.
Allen.
Brandon Allen, that's right. I picked up Ryan Finley in a couple leagues, so that was fab well spent. But is there anything obviously besides the Burrow heartbreak and the Gibson breakout that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, with Cincinnati, I would be really worried about potentially playing T. Higgins. I'm not too worried about Boyd going forward, but T. Higgins, I'm a little bit more worried about. Boyd being in the slot, usually that's a little bit more of a comfortable throw for a quarterback. So um, I would probably sit T. Higgins this week if you have anybody that's even in the same range as him. Um, and that sucked. Yeah, I mean, Burrow, I mean, he might be worth buying right now if you're in like a 2-year plan or something, to make, especially in Superflex, to, make a move for maybe there's somebody who's competing or contending and needs a quarterback, and you might be able to make a decent move for, the long term. Um, as for Washington, I mean, it's going to be hit or miss a little bit. McLaurin still does well regardless. He's the only guy that I'm happy playing going forward, and Gibson, of course. And I actually just traded for J.D. McKissick in a league where I was starting two guys that probably none of us had ever heard of. So J.D. McKissick is now a starting running back for one of my teams. That's 8-3.
Yeah, hey, listen, I have a 10-1 team that I've been trying to add JD McKissick to. But so I want to bring up 2 points, and you actually brought up a good point about Burrow. I think something I want to do on my contending teams is if Burrow is on a team that was, had a top 4 pick maybe, if he's still on that team during the draft, I'm almost wondering if I want to try to, and I know not everyone is going to, is going to buy it, but if I have like 110, 111, see if that rebuilding team wants to get another first for Joe Burrow, knowing that I am a contender and knowing that I'm probably stashing the guy for a year. But, obviously you have to believe in the talent to do
You're
that
saying do this during the draft?
during the draft.
Okay, I think
If
you're
he's
less
on
likely
it.
to get something like that done then, just because I think you need to make that move right now when a team's worried about their quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
because they just lost him. Because if you've already weathered the playoffs without him, you're less apt to make that move. I mean, at least I am. So, because I'm like, okay, well, he is coming back this year. I anticipate him coming back. Unless we hear some news where there was some Washington doctors working on him or something, and like I just think that move has to be made this year. I think to get that extra value
Well,
personally.
I think that's why I prefaced it by saying if he's still on a team that had a top 4 pick, a team that's rebuilding, they may not want to weather that storm. They may another first round pick may be enticing to them, and it's all dependent. You never
Sure.
know. Every league is different, but
Hmm.
this is another thing I want to bring up though because this is a guy I've been trying to get with little to no luck, and that is T Higgins. If if he comes out and he's 2 for 22, let's say, um, I think he's a guy I'm trying to buy. Like, yeah, I understand that, like with Brandon Allen and Ryan Finley and whatever else, they dig up at quarterback for the rest of this year and probably to start probably the first month or two of next year too. It's not going to be good, but knowing that once Burrow gets back, man, that guy he's a stud. He is a stone cold stud. Our main man, Dynasty Outhouse. He's all hashtag. Was a big Clemson wide receiver, and I I was unsure about him going into draft season, but I'm sure now.
Yeah.
I, I
Hard to
I
not
am
be, right?
I am sure now. I didn't say he sucked, and I didn't say he was going to be a stud, but golly, he is good. He is very good. So he might be a guy. Maybe this week doesn't do it because the T Higgins owner has 11 weeks of seeing what he can do, but maybe 3, 4 not so great games. Maybe that's when you can slide in. I know a lot of people were saying that it would take probably a mid-first to get T. Higgins off your hands. This is maybe after 3 or 4 games that don't go well, maybe it's a late first. Now it all depends. T. Higgins could also ball out with these bums, and it doesn't matter. You ain't getting them again anyway, but it might be something to keep an eye on.
Yep. And I'd pay a first and second for him if that was necessary.
There you
Like if
go.
you're talking about a late first and somebody that's not quite gonna make it happen, and you're a playoff team, I'd do a first and second for him, even if he struggles the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, I get your guy, right? All right, Lions Panthers. DJ Moore goes 7 receptions, 127 yards. Curtis Samuel, 8 receptions for 70 yards and a touchdown. Blank the Detroit Lions with Philip Walker, as I saw on the bottom scroll, which I was like, Philip? I didn't know he changed his name to Philip. It was old PJ in the XFL, but now he's in the NFL. He's fancy, Philip.
Oh, you
So,
fancy.
yeah, you fancy now. So, what? Anything else you saw from those games? Those two guys blew up.
Nope.
Not sounds good. Steelers Jags. Listen, I don't even know how many more nice things I could say about Deontay Johnson. 12 receptions, 111 yards. That boy good. We've been talking about him since November of last year. Okay, people? We were here. Everybody says, oh, I love Deontay. No, we love Deontay for a long ass time. All right. So anybody who talks about their Deontay love and how long they loved him for probably didn't love him for as long as we did. That's all I want to say about that. Anything else from that game?
Nope. Good team beat bad team.
That usually happens that way. Titans Ravens. King Henry, man. Derrick Henry holds court in Baltimore. 133 rushing yards and a touchdown. He's good too.
Yeah, he is good. And he's also very big and very fast and very capable of wearing a defense down. I mean, it was just crazy like how the Ravens kind of looked like they had everything under control into the third quarter, and then you just started seeing guys start struggling tackling Derrick Henry. And
Yeah.
then in the fourth quarter he does what he does. I mean, it's like you can write the story beforehand, and this is what's going to happen. He's not going to look great the first half. Then the third quarter, he's going to start looking okay, and then the fourth quarter, he's going to dominate. And then, by the time he got to overtime, these guys are like, "Bump this! I can't even tackle this fool anymore." And then he
It's,
just,
it's like having kids. Like you walk into a restaurant with your kid, and your kid's smiling, and your kid's happy, and everyone's looking around. Oh my God, what a well-behaved kid! You put them in the high chair. They come take your order. The kid smiles at the waitress. Oh man, what a nice kid. Then like the food is like 5 minutes away from being done. That kid is throwing Cheerios. He is colored all over the table in a crayon. The iPad is not doing it. And you're like, what the hell just happened? This kid walked in the door. He was so nice. And now all of a sudden he is awful. And that's Derrick Henry. And it's funny because you were saying Derrick Henry can wear down a defense. I actually thought you were going to say Derrick Henry can wear a defense because he's just so massive that
yeah,
he
that
can
too.
just put on defenders like clothing and wear them, which I mean, we've actually seen him do that before. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I always remember the picture of him next to Dion Lewis, and
Oh yeah, that's funny.
it literally looked like a dad who was taking his kid to work, and these were two grown ass adults that were NFL players, and one looked like an adult and the other one looked like a child standing next to each other. That picture I will never forget. But let's go on to Pat's Texans here. Patriots and the Texans. Deshaun Watson, 380 total yards, 3 total touchdowns, slays the Pats. And, I'm happy for the Texans because the the Dolphins own their first round pick and their second round pick. And it was getting a little depressing when it was in the top 3 and you're like, God, this team is terrible, and they don't have a first round pick,
Yeah.
and they don't have a second round pick,
And they don't have Hopkins.
Then they don't have Hopkins. Oh God, why? But hey, they got Laramie Tunsil.
I mean, it's better than nothing.
No, I'm pretty sure nothing would be better if they could get all those picks back. But is there anything else from this game that caught your eye?
I don't think so. I mean, it's just you know, the offense for New England is just rough, and I just don't know. Like, they just lost Burkhead, who was really the most productive running back. So, I mean, I guess maybe, but then they bring Sony back. So it's like, what the heck's going on? I don't even know, like, where to even start with that backfield still. You'd think it would clear up after losing a guy, but nope, it doesn't. So, still a mess over there. And I think Cobb's out this week with COVID.
Yeah.
So be careful in your lineups for that. Cobb and what's the other wide receiver? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Played for Miami for a little bit.
For Miami for a little bit. Oh, Kenny Stills.
Stills, yes. Thank you.
Kenny Bills.
So QT might be a thing.
Yeah, he might be a thing. Yeah, actually, Randall Cobb got put on the IR.
Oh, okay.
Looks like they're saying a toe injury here, and
then I'm wrong.
Kenny Stills isn't traveling with the team. Looks like a quadriceps injury. So, if you're in some super deep leagues and Cobb and Stills were guys that you were were going with, then you gotta go somewhere else. So. Larry Monkey, co-host of the Dynasty Hot Sauce podcast, Dynasty Outlook, God Winner God, and I'll preface this by saying, Larry had a birthday bash on Monday, a 4-hour extravaganza. Everybody was on, from little old me to guys like Scott Fish, Ryan McDowell, Samantha Praveet, Faith. I'm missing people, and I'm sorry, but there was a lot of cool people on, and I don't remember who brought this up. There was a conversation about Godwin and where do you rank him, and is he still good? Is he not good? There, a fight broke out over that, and someone brought up the question: Godwin or God? So, Bill, I'm gonna go with you first. Is it Godwin or is it God?
I think Godwin's probably the better wide receiver. So I'm gonna go with Godwin.
I don't know, man. I mean, Godwin is he's elite. I'm not gonna lie. But I mean, we're talking about God here. I mean, the guy he's a natural athlete. He does all of his best work in sandals. So could you imagine putting a pair of cleats on him?
It would all go to hell.
Oh, that's a good point. All right, you convinced me. I was going to go with God, but now I'm going with God win. So,
okay.
Larry,
thanks, Larry.
You got two Godwins. But you know what? If you have God, I think you can get some picks for him. I think you can get a nice little package.
Trade him to Houston.
Oh man, they need him. That's for they need all the help they can get. Now watch. You say that, and you know the Lions are going to come out there and shock the world.
They probably will.
And win that game.
Yeah.
Because you want Matt Patricia gone so bad. So you know this game is a W for the Lions, just to spite you.
Yep.
All right, let's look it up. Dolphins, Broncos. Denver rides Melvin Gordon 84 yards, 2 touchdowns to what I think is an upset of the Miami Dolphins. They're playing well. That team is looking good, and it was an upset. And Tua did not look great. Ryan Fitzpatrick came in at the end of that game, and then Coach Flores said at the end of it, that there's no controversy. Like Tua's the guy. It'll be interesting to see how Tua reacts because once he came in at Alabama, he did not ever come off the field again unless he was injured. So I'm very curious to see how he'll react. I think he'll react well, but it's always interesting to see. Anything else you saw from that one?
No, I mean it was just like a rookie quarterback, against a really good defensive coach, and it was just one of those things that rookies are going to get confused here and there, and I think that's just what happened. And you throw the vet in just because the speed's a little bit slower for him, and I'm not worried about Tua because of that. I don't think that that's even like a conversation piece, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously we're going to talk about it, but it's
Yeah,
nothing to worry about, and so not worried there. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about the other side. Um, Nothing really
sounds good.
caught my eye.
We can move. We can move on. Cowboys Vikings. Now is Zeke back? 103 rushing yards. Is he back? Is it maybe the Cowboys reshuffled the offensive line? Andy Dalton was behind center. Does this give you a maybe a renewed interest in starting Zeke if you have Zeke, or maybe trying to acquire Zeke on the back end? Dallas, I think, actually has a pretty tough remaining schedule, so I don't know if I would be in the acquisitions business for Zeke. But what about you? Is Zeke back?
I mean, I don't think he was ever gone, to be honest with you. I think it was just a
Okay.
bad situation. Like, I mean, when you have a quarterback that can't throw the ball, I mean, what's the defense going to do? You're going to move closer to the line of scrimmage and you're going to stop their elite running back. And that's what happened. And now that you have a quarterback that at least the defenses have to respect as an NFL starter, it opens things up a little bit for him. And like you said, I mean, I wasn't aware of that because I don't pay attention to the Cowboys as much, but they did some things with their line, so maybe that also helped. But I think that just putting Dalton back there changes the whole dynamic of the offense. Um, so I was starting Zeke regardless, because I still believe that he is, even if you don't want to say top five, I mean, which I know you would say top five, but even if somebody doesn't quite feel that way anymore, he's still like a must start in my opinion. I don't think he's a guy that you ever sit.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to the people. I lied about the Cowboys schedule. Obviously, tomorrow they have Washington, which, I mean, their defensive line is good. They do stop the run, so that is tougher than the name implies. Then they follow that up with the Ravens, which is a good defensive team. And if they get beaten by the Steelers, they may be coming into that game pissed off. But then it's the Bengals, the 49ers, the Eagles, and the Giants. So the last four there aren't really not world beaters for that last four. So all right, let's move on here. Jets, Chargers. Herbert finally wins one. Massive performance, 366 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Pretty much just doing what Justin Herbert's been doing all season for the most part. So, yeah, anything else from there? The Jets, I think that we're actually trying to win that game in the first half. It was weird. And
Flacco looked actually okay in the game, minus that pick six to start the game.
right.
Um, but he looks like actually an adequate backup. Yeah, Herbert every week. I mean, there's not one time when we're like, well, he's a rookie, he struggled with this. Like, it's just not happened. We haven't had to say
No.
that one time, and so I mean, I listened to Trade Addicts today, and Har said that he's his dynasty QB2,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, Yeah, that might be a little ambitious for me at the moment, but Har's been kind of at the front of this Herbert thing for a while, and so I get it. It's his guy, and he kind of equated him to Mahomes a little bit earlier in the year, and before, when everybody's like, yeah, maybe you need to cool your jets a little bit, but I mean, he's making these deep throws that are just like spot on, or at least giving the receivers the opportunity to make these catches, and I mean, I forget what pod it was I was listening to earlier today, and they were talking about like, imagine when Eckler comes back. It's not like they've been utilizing their running backs in the passing game, and so once Eckler comes back, he's gonna start dumping it off to his running back. Like, I'm curious to see like where his like air yards per attempt is before and after Eckler. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
so he's probably gonna be It's probably gonna be dropping a bit, and that's only going to help him. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But I mean, he might even get better soon.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even think about that. That's insane to think about Eckler coming back. And while you can make an argument for a lot of other quarterbacks at QB2, you can really start to make an argument for Justin Herbert now. I mean,
Yeah.
and a good argument, not even pulling things from deep in left field. I mean, you can pull some real things. And I'm not saying he needs to be everyone's QB2, but I'm saying that he is in that conversation with guys like, Deshaun Watson and Dak Prescott and quarterbacks of that ilk. Just because he's, like you said, he has not played like a rookie this season, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and Har also brought up that, like, he understands, even last year Baker Mayfield was the number 2 guy, or whatever year that was, and people get excited for these rookies, and so sometimes defenses figure out their weaknesses, and so the second year these guys kind of struggle, so there is that potential, and that's something at least maybe be aware that could happen. But if there's a good quarterback, he's going to end up being able to adjust beyond that. And if you're playing Dynasty, it doesn't matter if he struggles a bit next year.
And what I'll say is I think the difference between the two is the situation. What I mean by that is we hyped up Baker Mayfield because he'd gotten Odell Beckham Jr. Jarvis Landry was there. Nick Chubb was on the ascent. It was like, oh my God, there's weapons everywhere. We were talking about David Njoku.
Yep, I agree.
Should be blowing up. When we look at Justin Herbert, I agree. Teams are going to watch film and teams are going to find the flaws. I think the difference is, though, we're not projecting his weapons. No. His weapons are what they are. Like, Keenan Allen is one of the best wide receivers in the game.
Yep.
Mike Williams is that deep ball guy, that 50-50 guy. Austin Eckler is a stone cold stud. Hunter Henry, when he's healthy, is a very good tight end. Like, we don't need to really go, oh, well, now Odell Beckham is in the system, and now, they got this guy and that guy. The guys that are there are pretty much going to be the guys that are there next year. So it's almost like, man, it's just one more year of all of them growing together. But I do agree. Defensive coordinators are going to find some weaknesses, and they're going to try to exploit them. And, we'll see in year 2 if Justin Herbert can go on the Mahomes track, where we kind of thought this about Mahomes. And yes, the numbers went down. He did not throw for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, but he was still elite and continues to be.
And let's just do the eye test, right? Like, I mean, Baker, he can't make those throws. He's not somebody that you go, he made elite throws as a rookie. Like, there was no elite throws. He hit the wide open guys, and that's different. And so just being able to hit those deep passes and throw it accurately beyond 15 yards, that's a huge difference between these two guys. And so he's already got that going for him. Just because I like to take any opportunity to thrash Baker that I can.
I know you do, and I'm here for it. So Colts Packers, is JT back, man? Is Jonathan Taylor back? Uh, 22 attempts for 90 yards. I mean, are we, are we calling him RB1 after this? Obviously not. But I'm hoping this is the start of a trend where Jonathan Taylor gets a lot of carries, is able to kind of what we talked about with Nick Chubb, or I'm sorry, with Derrick Henry, where he can get in there and he can wear down a defense and he can get in there and at the end of the third quarter and the fourth quarter and really start inflicting damage on a team. I'm hoping. I think I'm saying I'm hoping because I don't believe it'll happen. Frank Reich, and listen, for all the people that complain about Frank Reich isn't giving JT all the touches and isn't doing that and isn't doing this, that team is winning games. What he is doing is correct. He does not care about your fantasy team. What he is doing is correct. Whether it's, hey, this is going to be the Nyheim Hines game, and he's going to, which was what it was last week, or it's the Jordan Wilkins game, which I think it was the week before that. I mean, he's literally riding the hot hand. As soon as someone kind of shows that they're the guy this week, that's going to be who the guy is. And unfortunately, we're not going to know that before the game starts. And I think he's going to continue like that throughout the year. But it was encouraging that Jonathan Taylor did get 22 rushing attempts in this game and was able to kind of show that he can get that workload and do something with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too worried about him yet. I mean, it's a rookie. You know what I mean? We see this all the time with rookies,
Yep.
and so like I'm not worried about it. I think next year we're gonna see him being the no question RB1. You know, and I think he's gonna be taking that next step and just being comfortable. And I'm okay. Like I'm adding him if I can. You know, during like this point or the off season.
I think as dynasty players, our minds have been blown in 2020 because the adage is rookie running backs can come into the league and just go. They don't need all this time to develop and do all this stuff. Wide receivers are the ones that need a year or two or three to develop, or if you're Devontae Parker or Corey Davis, 4 years to develop. And this year, it's been turned on its head because we have CeeDee Lamb, we have Justin Jefferson, we have T. Higgins, who we talked about. Brandon Ayuk looks good. You know, all these rookie wide receivers are coming in and they're blowing up. And these rookie running backs, you know, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift looked like he was actually looked like he had finally found his stride before missing last week. But all of those guys were kind of struggling, trying to find their footing, do this and that. And James Robinson, the undrafted free agent, is the one who came out and just went with it.
Yeah.
So I think this year, I think everything got turned on its head because we have always said, you know, it's the running backs that just hit the ground running, literally. And the wide receivers need more time to develop. And I think that's what has thrown everyone for a loop, especially when we talk about the Jonathan Taylor. Like, you know, do we trade Jonathan Taylor, you know, because he's not doing it, you know? People were taking Clyde Edwards-Helaire 105, you know, in startups in Superflex startups, you know.
Yeah, that happened to mine.
He was going 101 in some 1QB startups. So, you know, that I think that's what's really kind of messed people up. And we have to realize that sometimes, you know, rookies, no matter what the position is, they just need a little bit of time. And, you know, these guys didn't have the normal off-season program that they would have had in any other year. So now, you know, that even threw people off more because we definitely expected all these wide receivers to struggle and they're blowing up. And, you know, I'm curious now if teams will not bring their rookie wide receivers in for off-season training until training camp because it seems to have worked, you know, but I mean, obviously we're talking about a special class of wide receiver that came in. So, and we were saying that even before they went where they went. So, all right, let's hit it. We only got two more games. Chiefs, Raiders. I think Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill may be the best skill combo in the league. A tight end wide receiver. I mean, Kelce goes for 127 yards and a touchdown. Tyreek Hill, 102 yards and a touchdown. team is good. They're good everywhere. They're so good. I mean, I don't know if you saw anything, but they're so good.
No, I mean it was pretty cool to see Vegas, stick with them, beat them and stick with them. So it's kind of cool to
Yeah,
see the progress for that offense and that team as a whole. They're giving them a run for their money, and they're really the only team that's really done that. So it looks like they're going to be the team that's going to be battling with Mahomes, in the future. Um,
yeah,
until maybe the Chargers get that defense shored up and a little bit. But
yeah,
I mean, that was kind of cool. And yeah, I mean, there's just I don't even know what to say about Kansas City. I mean, it's just like it doesn't like Mahomes just makes everybody so good, and then to already have like really talented players on top of that, it's like almost unfair.
yeah. I mean, it's funny being in Philly. I saw Andy Reid get run out of here, and he went to Kansas City and literally was able to kind of build the team in his own image, and that team is very good.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna move on to the Monday night game, the Rams and the Buccaneers, and Jared Goff. And we are actually gonna talk about Jared Goff in a little bit, but he's playing well. 376 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, yes, Jared Goff has his highs and his lows, but his highs are very high. I mean, the coaching staff there, they set up an offense that highlights what he does well and tries to hide what he does poorly, which sounds like every coaching staff should do that, but they don't. So it's good to see a coaching staff that accomplishes that goal. Uh, Bill, anything else from this game that you saw?
Man, Brady just looked really, really bad. It looked like he wasn't even in the game, and he was so frustrated because he threw the ball 3 times to Fournette, and the ball just popped right out of his hands. And that third drop, man, you could just see Brady fuming, and like I could see steam, it was like ghost steam, but I could see it, and like I mean, he was just so pissed. So I think that we're gonna see something happen with the running backs. But I don't know what you can really do at this point, right? You got who you got, and I mean, you can't put McCoy in because he's just not dynamic enough, like anymore. He just doesn't have that agility. So it's like you got bad pass catchers or bad running backs. So it's like, what do you do? You know what the player is going to do when you bring that running back in. Like if you're a bad catcher, he's going to run the ball, or vice versa. So it's I don't know what's going to happen to this team. I mean, they're so talented, but I think once they hit the playoffs, it's just going to be like, it's going to be a struggle for them.
Yeah, and the difference between Tom Brady in New England and Tom Brady in Tampa, besides obviously age, which is Father Time is undefeated, but it's not even so much an age thing because he can throw well if he's not getting pressured. And yes, you can say that about every quarterback. But in New England, they didn't always have the most talented offensive line, but they made sure that they did things with that line to protect Brady, whether it was stunts or realignments or whatever the case may be. And it looks like Bruce Arians has his system, and it doesn't really call for trying to configure the offensive line to protect
Yeah.
Brady. And
Well, and they also had James White, right? Like, which is a great
well,
safety valve for a quarterback.
and that was going to be my next point. Not only did they have James White, but they had Rex Burkhead. And, they had guys who had very sure hands. Where if they were out on the field, can both those guys run the ball? Yes, they can. But that's not their main focus. That's not what they're out there to do. They're out there to make sure that, hey, listen, Aaron Donald comes up the middle and he just, smacks an offensive lineman out of the way. Whoop, there's James White. There's Rex Burkhead. And they're catching it and they can scamper for 5 to 7 yards and just make sure that A, Tom Brady doesn't get hit, but B, they can keep the chains moving and they can keep drives going. And, I'm actually kind of shocked that the the Buccaneers didn't get one of those type of guys either through free agency or through the draft. Because, I mean, listen, Rojo, he can be good on occasion. Leonard Fournette can be good on occasion. But those guys aren't known for their pass catching chops, as they would say. And I'm shocked that, actually a guy that they did have that they cut, Dare Ogunbowale, was kind of that guy last year, where it was like, all right, like Jameis is getting, three guys thrown at him. All right, dump it to Dare for 3 to 5 yards, and let's like not take a sack. Let's not, throw a ball, out of bounds. And they cut that guy, and they didn't. I don't think they brought in a guy who has that skill set. So it'll be very interesting to see Tom Brady in the playoffs, which I am going to assume they will be in the playoffs, because they can beat up on the bad teams and the bad defenses, but the talented teams and the talented defenses give them a hard time, and they're going to see a lot of those in the NFC playoff picture. So we'll find out. All right, so we hit all the news there. We're going to move on to the timeline, and we're going to talk about something we talked about a little bit during the news. This is from Riddell FF, the fantasy football guy at Riddell FF. I feel absolutely filthy for putting Taysom Hill in at tight end on ESPN. So, Bill, I want to ask your opinion on this first, because obviously everyone was giving their opinion during the week about this. Do you think it is bad form or wrong to have put in Taysom Hill as your tight end for Week 11?
Nope.
That makes yeah.
No, I mean, that's what the setting is. I mean, it was just the same thing as Ty Montgomery a few years ago, when everybody was saying, well, he's a wide receiver, but Green Bay was playing him at running back, and so people were getting running back stats from wide receiver position. I mean, it's just the way it is.
And look, all platforms do this. On Sleeper, at one point, J.D. McKissick was a running back and a wide receiver. I think Cordarrelle Patterson was a running back and a wide receiver as well.
There's a guy on MFL that is a wide receiver, running back, quarterback.
Oh.
I believe it's MFL or it's Sleeper.
I think it's Sleeper.
Perry for Miami. I think he was the quarterback for Navy or for one of the armed services, and they drafted him as a wide receiver, but now he's like listed as three positions.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, is, for as long as you're going to play fantasy, there are going to be players like this. And honestly, we just get more and more of them in the league every year. I mean, this was kind of the talk when we were talking about Laviska Shenault coming in. Like, hey, like, he runs the ball a lot. He catches the ball a lot. What is he? And we're going to just, I mean, obviously, I don't think we're going to have another guy like Taysom Hill who could literally be put in at any position just because of everything he does on the field. But, we're going to have guys who are going to be considered multi-positional players. No, you shouldn't feel dirty. There were people who were like, you're wrong. It's not the spirit of the game, blah, 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 blah. Listen, if you had him and you were so inclined to play him at tight end, you should have played him at tight end. Like, I would have. I'm not going to lie. I am not playing on ESPN this year just because I had one league and then it got canceled on ESPN. That's the only reason why I'm not playing. It's not a personal stance or anything. But I would have played him. I would have put him in that tight end spot, or I would have put him in that flex spot, and I would have said, all right, let's go. Like, I have two quarterbacks in a one quarterback league. Sorry, I got the guy. I either won him with Fab, or I was crazy enough for some reason to draft him and keep him until week 11. But that's what it is. No, you shouldn't feel dirty. I hope you won, just because it was a cheat code. It was a loophole. It was whatever you want to call it, but it was within the rules of the game. And ESPN is also now you can keep Taysom Hill in the tight end spot, even though they've now classified him as a quarterback, but you can't make any other moves. So if your lineup is set and, you're through all your buys and you have your best team playing every week, you could possibly ride that until the end of the season. So, I mean, I've seen people today, commissioners are asking their Taysom Hill owners to please take him out of the tight end spot. But I mean, honestly, if there's not, bylaws, let's bring up bylaws again, because we talk about the importance of bylaws. If there's nothing in the bylaws, or there are no bylaws, then keep them in for as long as you want. Keep them in for as long as you can and get the extra points. Now, I will say, while I think Taysom Hill played an okay game, they played Atlanta, whose defense has been notorious for giving up great stats. So I'm going to say he did okay, but I'm also not going to crown him as, the next QB1. We'll see if the defenses get tougher, if he still is putting up the kind of stats that he did last week. So I'm kind of reserving my judgment on Taysom Hill, but I think he played an okay game. So if you want, obviously at the tight end spot, like Travis Kelce, that's the only person that's outscoring him. Travis Kelce. So
yeah, I mean, honestly, like it's an interesting thing just to talk about Taysom Hill as like a just more long term. Like I think he looked good for his first game as a starter in the NFL. Like he made some deep passes, he's actually able to make some deep passes, which Breeze really doesn't do much anymore. So it kind of changes the dynamic of the whole offense. Emmanuel Sanders had a couple deep passes and receptions, and it's interesting. Like maybe they do really intend for him to be the guy who takes over for Breeze. And I'm in a league in Trade Addicts 3, and I have Taysom Hill, and somebody offered me Mecole Hardman for him, and like I'm almost like, I'm lacking quarterbacks going into the future, and so I just said I'd rather just roll the dice and hold on to Taysom and see if he's going to end up being the starter next year. I didn't know what to ask for, because like a second's not enough for me.
right.
Like what's a second do for me really? So like I said, I asked for a 22 first, and he didn't respond to that. But I think that's kind of where I'm at value wise for him right now in a super flex, just because to get a starter, I mean that's just worth it. I'd rather just let him sit on my bench and see what happens, because you got him for virtually nothing anyway.
Yeah, and it's funny because you said Mecole Hardman, and I was like, I mean, I wouldn't trade a bag of balls for Mecole Hardman right now. But Taysom Hill's value has now gone up because we've seen one game of him, and he played, in my opinion, he played okay.
Yeah.
Which for a quarterback in a super flex league is fine, because you don't need, 4 studs on your team. If you have a stud or two and then an okay, third guy to fill in on bye weeks and for injury, you're set. You're doing well.
Yeah, and as a transition, I would rather have him than our next topic.
Right. So, my thing is, I think that if he plays well again, that price just goes up, and he's going to be in first round pick territory in a trade. And even if he doesn't play well, I think he still fetches more than Mecole Hardman. So, yeah, I think you played that beautifully. And Bill is the captain of the segue. So we got this one here. This is from Jay from FF Outpost. And he's saying, wait a second. I need to hear from the people. So I'm glad he's bringing the people in on this. This is kind of what we try to do on. Yeah, we try to do this on our show. We try to bring in the people. We want the people. So this is a 12-team Superflex Dynasty, and we're going to play a little fill in the blank. I like fill in the blank. So Drew Lock is blank, and here are the options. I already know what Bill's going to pick.
I already know the answer without looking at the options.
I know what Bill's going to pick.
Drew Lock is
So I'm going to change this up after I read all the options. So Drew Lock is a quarterback 2, not even rosterable, struggling but solid, replaced this offseason. So obviously Bill and I have our bet. Bill doesn't think he is the starter in 2021. I think he will start. So
Well, let's be
Bill,
clear. I don't think he's a starter for all. Like, I think he'll start less than half of the games next year.
okay. So that option is off the table for you personally, Bill.
Sure.
You cannot pick replace this offseason.
Yeah.
So out of the other 3, is Drew Lock a QB2?
Yep.
Not even rosterable or struggling but solid.
He's not struggling but solid. He's struggling. So I say he's a QB2. Like, I mean, that's fine. I'm okay saying that for while he's playing. I just don't think he's a great quarterback that's long term going to be the answer for, like, from what I've seen. Like, I mean, he's a young kid, so he can improve. So everything I'm saying is based off of this moment and the way it looks. Like, if he blows up the second half of the season, then obviously I'm incorrect, right? And that's okay. But from what I've seen and in his decision making and his lack of accuracy, I think he's fine as a starter. He's a QB2, like that's okay. I just don't think long term he's going to be the starter for Denver as of this moment.
All right. So I see. Here's the thing. I picked struggling but solid, but the problem is that like
he's not solid.
But like, what's solid? Because if a QB2 is better than solid, I think he's struggling but solid. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, I could see where you would interpret it that way. I think like
wording.
Solid to me is a guy who can be a QB1. Like if you're a solid quarterback, you could end up being like a QB 9 to 15 range. Like for me, I think that he's battling to be like the end of a QB2, like 20 to 24.
All right. So, and I was going to follow up by saying I hate that wording because solid to me seems like okay, but solid could obviously be interpreted in a myriad of ways.
For sure.
So that's the reason why I picked that.
Yeah.
Because he is struggling. Like I think we all can agree.
Yeah. Well, can we? Yeah, just remove the second part. Let's just say struggling.
But I actually, Bill, we're here for each other. We're a team. We do things for each other, and I actually want to bolster your point here. So I went on MFL and I looked up the points per game for Sir Drew Lock. Take one guess out of the top 32 quarterbacks where Drew Lock ranks on that list. He is in the top 32.
Yeah, I was gonna like. That's a good question. I have no idea the answer. He's had a lot of junk. Is this points per game?
Points per game, yes.
Okay. He has a lot of junk time stats. I'm going to say 18.
18.
He's probably, yeah.
Okay. So at 18 is Theodore Bridgewater.
Oh, he's way worse than Teddy.
Right. So
okay,
I will
27.
That is Daniel Jones.
Oh, well, I would rather have Daniel Jones.
So Drew Lock comes in at 30.
Oh wow. So
let me throw some of the names, points per game, that are ahead of Drew Lock. Dwayne Haskins. And we have taken a mighty big dump on Dwayne Haskins. We already talked about Daniel Jones. Saint Nick Foles ahead of Drew Lock. Here's one for you. Here's one that'll give you a chuckle, and it's a 1-game sample size.
Oh.
Garrett Gilbert Grape.
He looked good.
Points per game,
Yeah.
better than Drew Lock. So I'm actually strengthening your point, and that's why I said we're here for each other.
Thanks, brother.
It's not, and it still doesn't lead me to believe that they're gonna replace him just because I think that they're going to attack other needs. I think that I think Drew Lock is on like this I think 2021 is going to be the year he has to prove that he's either going to be the long-term option or he's going to be out of there. So but yeah, he's not doing well. Like
No.
let's face it.
I mean, that leash is going to be so short next year. Like, I mean, that's where my brain's at least.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. We still have to come up with some terms for that bet, but yeah, so there you go. And actually bringing replace this offseason back on the table. A QB2 is leading right now at 33%, but replace this offseason is second with 31%. So people have some very diverging thoughts on
well, and
what
those aren't
Drew Lock
mutually
is.
those aren't mutually exclusive, right? Like, I mean, he is a QB2. Well, he's not. He's QB3.
He's
right
not a
now.
QB2.
Okay, disregard.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting for sure because obviously Bill and I see some different things, and obviously the people voting in this poll are seeing some different things as well. So this last one we got here is from a friend of the show, John Bauer at the Bauer Club. They discussed this last night on their episode of Dynasty Theory. They're at Dynasty Theory FF. By the way, if you're not listening to them for some reason, man, do yourself right and listen to that. John Bauer, Mitch, Coach Dan, dude, all three of those guys are so smart about this game. They're so good at the podcasting thing. They do it all really well. It's entertaining, it's fun, it's informative. If you're listening to us, please go download their pod, subscribe because they are doing it right. But let's get to the question here. They discussed this on their episode last night. They're interested to see how people feel, and I asked JB before if we could use this. He said, "Man, you never have to ask me," but I have too much respect for JB to not ask before using one of his tweets. So, if you're a contender in a 12-team Superflex league, who do you prefer? So Joe Burrow and Jared Goff, two guys we talked about in the news portion. So are you going with Burrow or are you going with Goff? Who's your guy?
I mean, if I'm a contender, it doesn't matter. I'm going with Joe Burrow. Like, I mean, like it doesn't matter. I'm a Burrow guy. Like, I really like Burrow. Like, he was my top guy coming into the season. He hasn't done anything to, counteract that. He still looks elite. I mean, I think he is a top 10 quarterback right now. I'm okay weathering the storm with him. I typically the way I play, I'm going to have 3 or 4 quarterbacks on my roster, so I don't have to worry about making a move for Goff. And I would much rather make a move for an aging quarterback that's on a team that's not contending. Like, I would make a move for maybe Rivers or make a move for Breeze from like a team who's not, in the playoff contention, rather than trying to make a move of Burrow for Goff. Like, I don't mind Goff, but I just don't like the price, and I would much rather have Burrow on my roster. And to be honest with you, I'm not moving Burrow regardless of my situation in any of my leagues, unless I am just built to be a true champion and I need a second quarterback.
Yeah, Bill, this is why it's good that there's 2 guys on this pod. Because we're talking about Burrow and Goff, and we're talking about a contender, man. Like, we gotta remember this. We're talking about a contender, which is why I need to tell you why it needs to be Joe Burrow, man. I'm with you 100%, man. Dude, he's shown you for the first 11 weeks of the season why he deserved to be the number one pick, why he was, the best quarterback in college football in 2019, why he led LSU to a national championship, and now that team is on the struggle bus this year in 2020. He's proven it all. So yes, I'm going with Joe Burrow. I'm not trading him unless somebody comes with the offer I can't refuse. I mean, you're gonna give me some random first? No, thank you. I don't want that. You giving me Jared Goff? No, thank you. I don't want that either. Like we've seen 11 weeks of Joe Burrow, and that dude we know is going to be great as long as he recovers from this injury well. And just bringing up points per game, since I have it up already, Joe Burrow is 21st. Jared Goff is 19th. So we're not talking about, and we're talking about 11 weeks of Joe Burrow versus a Jared Goff that has been in the league for multiple years. So we're seeing probably the best we're gonna see from Jared Goff with a genius of an offensive coach. We're seeing probably the best we're seeing of Jared Goff. We have Joe Burrow, who's only has 11 weeks of experience with a coach that, let's face it, we don't know. We don't know what he is really, but a lot of people aren't, proclaiming him to be the next offensive mastermind. So, I mean, he could get upgraded in a year or two with, maybe Joe Brady, maybe Bieniemy from Kansas City. Like there's a lot of options, and that job is going to become more attractive now because Joe Burrow is behind center. So, I'm with you. It's Joe Burrow. I don't have him anywhere, unfortunately, but if I did, it would take a haul to get him off of me because I think that dude is the real deal. I think he's going to be very good for a very long time. As long as everything goes well with his recovery from this major knee injury. So, Bill, that's it, man. We did it. We made it through another episode. Had a lot of fun, man. I love talking with you. You're my dude. The chat was going off. Lindsey Kennedy, Larry Monkey, so many people were in and out. It was crazy. Appreciate you guys in the chat. You guys make it so much fun. A lot of jokes today with Clinton Dix and Godwin or God. That was fun.
Such a child.
That just makes us laugh, and it makes it more fun too because it doesn't always need to be fantasy football and knowledge. It can be fun too. That's what we want, man. We want to have fun. We want to laugh and joke with each other and debate and do all that stuff. So it's fun. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Periscope, remember to hit the bell, subscribe. It's going to let you know when we go live, and we have other things going on, man. The DAP network is flying high. They're doing well, and we're going to have a whole bunch of other things coming on that channel. So make sure you're subscribed so you know when all that goes live. If you're listening to us on podcast, thank you very much, man. It's awesome. We appreciate that so much. Subscribe, rate, review. It helps get us out there. We read the comments when we get them. We appreciate that as well. So, Bill, I think on that note, I think we're getting out of here.
Happy Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for you, Josh. Late.
Oh, man, you know what, man? I know you hit the late on me, but you can't say you're thankful for me and just run out the back door. I appreciate you too, man. You are you're the glue that holds this operation together. You're the brains to my very loud mouth, and I appreciate that, man. I honestly could not have found anyone better to do this show with. So, as thankful as you are for me, I am also that much more thankful for you. So, on that note, he already said late, so we are getting out of. Oh no!
Late.
Ah.